The hallway was quiet, but Laura Bennett felt like something was already wrong. It was the kind of feeling that crept in without warning, a tight pull in the chest that made the air feel thinner. She had lived in this house for over 20 years, long enough to know its sounds, its moods, its silence. Tonight the silence felt heavy. She was holding a sweater she had found on the couch. It belonged to her son, Ethan. He had moved back home a few months earlier, just until he could find his footing again. Laura had been happy to have him back. The house felt warmer with him in it, less empty. Still, lately he had seemed different. Quieter, more distant, she had noticed, but she hadn't pushed. As Laura walked past Ethan's bedroom, she heard his voice. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. That was what made her stop. "I can't keep doing this," Ethan said, his voice low, intense. "It's not right." Laura slowed her steps. The door was not fully closed. A soft yellow light spilled into the hallway. She told herself to keep walking. Everyone deserved privacy. Ethan was an adult, but her feet refused to move. "I know. You don't want to hurt her," Ethan continued. "But lying is hurting her anyway." Laura's heart began to pound. Her fingers tightened around the sweater. Lying hurt her. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them clear, all of them unsettling. There was a pause. Ethan listened to whoever was on the other end of the call. When he spoke again, his voice sounded tired. "You keep saying it doesn't mean anything," he said, "but it does. You don't talk like that to someone unless it means something." Laura felt a chill run through her. She leaned lightly against the wall, afraid her legs might give out. "I won't do it anymore," Ethan said firmly. "I won't cover for you." The sweater slipped from Laura's hands and landed quietly on the floor. The sound was soft, but to her it felt loud. Too loud. Ethan stopped talking. Laura held her breath. A moment passed. Then she heard him move away from the door. She turned quickly and walked back toward the living room, her heart racing. She sat down on the couch, staring straight ahead, her mind spinning. She had not heard names. She had not heard details. But she had heard enough. Something was wrong in her family. Her son was caught in the middle of it. That night, Laura barely touched her dinner. She told Ethan she wasn't very hungry. He nodded, avoiding her eyes. They spoke only a few polite words. The television played in the background, but neither of them watched it. When Ethan went to his room, Laura stayed on the couch long after the house went dark. Michael was away on a work trip. He would be gone to more nights. Normally, Laura would miss him. They would text before bed. A quick good night, a short update. About the day that night, her phone stayed silent. She didn't reach for it. She didn't know what to say. Lying in bed later, Laura stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. Her thoughts moved fast, jumping from memory to memory. She thought about Michael coming home late more often, about how he smiled at his phone sometimes, then put it away quickly when she entered the room, about how he seemed present yet distant, like part of him was somewhere else. She had noticed these things before. It explained them away. Stress, age, routine, marriage settling into something quieter. Now those explanations felt thin. Laura turned onto her side and closed her eyes. But images kept forming. Ethan's voice, his words. "You don't talk like that to someone unless it means something." She felt a deep ache in her chest, slow and steady, like a bruise being pressed again and again by morning. She felt exhausted. She moved through her routine on habit alone. Coffee, toast, a quick look at her phone, still no message from Michael. She set the phone down and focused on the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Ethan entered the kitchen. He looked tired, his shoulders slightly slumped. He poured himself coffee and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Did you sleep okay?" Laura asked gently. Ethan hesitated. "Not really." She nodded. "Me neither." Their eyes met briefly. Something passed between them. Not accusation, not anger. Just shared awareness. Ethan looked away first. Laura studied her son as he ate. He looked older than she remembered, not just in years, but in weight. Like he was carrying something heavy and didn't know where to. Put it out after breakfast, Ethan grabbed his jacket. "I'm going out for a bit," he said. "Okay," Laura replied. "Drive safe." When the door closed behind him, Laura sat alone at the table. The house felt too quiet again. She stared at the chair across from her. It's the empty space where Michael usually sat when he was home. She stood up and began to clean, needing to move. She washed dishes that were already clean. She folded laundry slowly, carefully, when she came. Across the sweater she had dropped the night before, she paused. She held it for a long moment, then folded it and placed it neatly in a drawer. By midday, Laura could no longer ignore the knot in her stomach. She knew she had a choice. She could wait for Michael to come home and pretend she knew nothing. Or she could face the truth, whatever it was, head on. But before she could confront her husband, she needed to understand her son. When Ethan returned that afternoon, Laura was waiting in the living room. She had turned off the television. The room was quiet, calm. She didn't want this to feel like an attack. "Ethan," she said, "can you sit with me for a minute?" He froze, just for a second. Then he nodded and sat across from her. Laura took a slow breath. "Heard you on the phone last night." Ethan's face went pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I didn't mean to listen," Laura said quickly. "But I heard enough to know something isn't right." Ethan looked down at his hands. His fingers were clenched together tightly. "I'm not mad at you," Laura continued. "I just need to understand." Silence filled the room. Laura waited. She didn't rush him. She could see the struggle on his face, the pull between loyalty and honesty. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Laura's heart sank. "Find out what?" Ethan swallowed. "Dad, he's been talking to someone." Words landed hard, even though Laura had expected them. "Talking how?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Ethan hesitated. "Late nights, long messages. Sharing things he doesn't share at home anymore." Laura closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, tears blurred her vision. But she didn't let them fall. "Does she know he's married?" Laura asked. "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "Does your father?" Laura asked. "Does he know what he's doing?" Ethan nodded. "He says it's not physical, that it's just emotional, that it makes him feel understood." Laura let out a slow breath. Emotional. The word echoed in her mind. It felt small compared to how much it hurt. "He asked you to lie for him," Laura said, not as a question. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "I hated it every time." Laura stood up and crossed the room. She sat beside her son and placed a hand on his arm. "You should never have been put in that position," she said softly. "That wasn't fair to you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you." "I know," Laura said. "But hiding the truth hurts too." They sat together in silence for a while. Mother and son, both wounded in different ways by the same secret. That evening, Laura received a message from Michael. He said his flight was on time. He would be home late the next night. He added a heart at the end. Laura stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then lowered. She didn't reply. As night fell, Laura stood by the window watching the streetlights glow. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something, a line she could never uncross. Once the truth was spoken aloud, nothing would be the same. She didn't know yet what she would say to Michael. She didn't know if their marriage could survive this quiet betrayal. All she knew was that the life she thought she understood had shifted. And tomorrow, when her husband walked through the front door, the silence between them would finally break. Laura woke up the next morning with a heavy sense of urgency. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft gold across the kitchen. She could hear Ethan moving around upstairs, getting ready for the day. He was quieter than usual, his steps measured. The air in the house felt thick, charged with tension and unspoken words. Laura made herself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, staring out the window, her mind racing. She knew today could not pass like any other day. She had to confront Michael, but she also had to prepare herself for what she might hear. Ethan appeared at the kitchen doorway, carrying a backpack. He paused when he saw her. "Morning," he said softly. His voice carried the same fatigue from the previous day. Laura nodded. "Morning," she replied, trying to keep her tone light, though she felt anything but. He set his bag down and sat across from her. Neither spoke for a moment. The weight of yesterday hung between them like a shadow. Laura finally broke the silence. "Ethan, I need to know everything you know, not just hints, everything." Ethan swallowed and looked down at his hands. He nodded slowly. "I already told you the main things. He's talking to someone, online, messages, emotional. It started small, just sharing thoughts, feelings, then it got bigger." Laura leaned forward, listening intently. She could see the struggle in his eyes. He wanted to protect his father, but he also knew hiding it was hurting everyone. "Did he ask you to lie for him again?" Laura asked. Her voice was calm but firm. Shh. Ethan's eyes met hers. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I hate that I did it, but I didn't know what else to do. I was scared if I told you or anyone, it would all fall apart." Laura nodded slowly, understanding the fear, the conflict. "It wasn't easy to see your parents as flawed, especially your father. You did what you thought was best," she said softly, "but it doesn't mean it's okay to hide it forever." After breakfast, Laura decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to talk to Michael before he came home, but the conversation had to be careful. She wanted honesty, not anger. She paced the living room, her mind replaying every interaction with him over the last few months. She remembered the small changes: longer hours at work, late-night messages, a distracted smile when he looked at his phone. She had pushed those thoughts aside, assuming it was stress or fatigue. Now she knew better. When Michael returned that evening, the moment he walked through the door, Laura felt her stomach tighten. He smiled when he saw her, a small, tired smile, and hugged her briefly. "Hey," he said, "how's your day?" Laura returned the hug, but didn't smile. "We need to talk," she said simply. The words felt heavier than expected. Michael noticed the seriousness in her tone and froze slightly. "About what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Laura didn't answer immediately. She motioned for him to sit at the table. They sat across from each other, the kitchen light warm but revealing. Laura took a deep breath. "I know about the messages," she said. Michael blinked, a brief flicker of surprise crossing his face before he composed himself. Laura continued, "Ethan told me everything. He's been protecting you, but I need the truth now. No more hiding." Michael's hands tightened around his mug. He avoided her gaze. "Laura." He stopped, swallowing. She waited, giving him space, though every second stretched painfully. Finally, he sighed. "Yes, I've been talking to someone. It's complicated. I didn't think it was hurting anyone. Never meant for it to go this far." Laura's chest tightened, but she stayed calm. She needed clarity, not arguments. "Did it mean anything?" she asked quietly. Michael hesitated, then shook his head slowly. "Not like us. Not really. Was attention. Feeling noticed. Felt lonely. I guess." His voice was low, filled with regret. Laura listened carefully, noting the honesty. It wasn't an excuse, but it was the truth he could admit. "Lonely," she repeated softly, "but I'm here. We've built a life together." Michael looked down. "I know. I lost myself for a moment. I wasn't thinking about us. I'm sorry." The room was quiet. Laura felt a wave of sadness, but also a strange relief. The truth was out. She didn't feel the need to pretend or wonder. Any more yet? The hurt lingered. Emotional betrayal was subtle but deep, cutting into trust in ways that weren't always visible. "We need to fix this," she said, her voice steady. "I don't want to live in the middle of secrets. We need honesty always." Michael nodded, a small, hopeful gesture. "I want that too," he said. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." The days that followed were a mix of difficult conversations and quiet moments of reflection. Laura and Michael spoke more openly than they had in years. They talked about boundaries, communication, and rebuilding trust. Sometimes the conversations were tense, voices rising and falling like waves. Other times they simply sat together, holding hands, letting the silence speak. Laura could see the effort in Michael's eyes. He was trying, truly trying. It mattered more than anything. Ethan watched these moments from the sidelines. He had been the messenger, the reluctant carrier of a painful truth. But he also felt relief. He saw his parents confronting reality instead of letting it fester. He realized that speaking up, though terrifying, had been the right choice. For the first time in weeks, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He could breathe again. Laura noticed changes in Michael, too. He was more attentive, more present. Simple gestures, a cup of coffee waiting for her in the morning, a hand on her shoulder when she walked by, felt significant. The emotional connection they had lost slowly returned, like a soft light breaking through clouds. It wasn't instant and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. They were both committed to healing step by step. There were moments of doubt. Laura caught herself thinking of the betrayal, of what could have been. She felt pangs of sadness, flashes of anger. But she reminded herself that the truth, painful as it was, had given them a chance to start again. She didn't need to erase the hurt. She needed to understand it, acknowledge it, and move forward. And Michael, for his part, faced his own shame and regret openly. He did not hide behind excuses or apologies. He worked to show, through actions, that he valued the family he almost risked losing. The family slowly adjusted to a new rhythm. Ethan continued his studies and part-time work, but the tension in the house eased. Conversations at dinner were lighter, more genuine. Laughter returned, tentative at first, but stronger with each day. Laura realized that this experience, as painful as it had been, had strengthened them in ways she hadn't expected. It forced honesty, vulnerability, and care to the surface. It reminded them all that love required effort, awareness, and courage. One evening, Laura found herself standing in the kitchen, watching Michael prepare dinner. The sunlight streamed through the window, highlighting the simple, everyday intimacy they had once taken for granted. She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet reassurance. The house was not perfect, nor were they, but it was theirs. They had faced a fracture, and while scars remained, the bond beneath was resilient. She smiled slightly, turning to see Ethan laughing with Michael over something trivial, a shared joke that lightened the air. The sound was comforting, proof that life could continue with care and commitment. Laura knew the road ahead would have challenges. Trust could waver, old doubts could resurface. But she also knew that they now had tools to confront those challenges together. Truth had become their foundation, and from it, hope could grow. Every conversation, every acknowledgement of past mistakes, every act of love and attention helped rebuild what had been shaken. In those quiet moments, Laura reflected on the day she had overheard Ethan's conversation. The fear and uncertainty that gripped her then felt intense, almost unbearable. But that fear had led to action, to confrontation, to healing. Sometimes the hardest truths, the ones that seem unbearable, are the ones that save us. And in her heart, she felt a deep, gentle certainty. Their family could survive this, stronger and more connected than before. From that day on, Laura, Michael, and Ethan moved forward with care, a step intentional, each moment appreciated. They had faced betrayal, fear, and pain, but they had not been defeated. Their story was one of quiet resilience, of learning to trust again, and of the power of love guided by honesty. And though they did not know what the future held, they knew they could face it together, with open hearts and unwavering commitment.